Hello, everyone. My name is Patarin Jossec. We're going to talk about queer pedagogy using AI today. I teach at DePaul as an adjunct in sociology and environmental studies, and I've been experimenting for the past year with how to use AI generators as part of my teaching, especially to teach gender. So the examples I'm going to use today are part of my LSP seminar on gender and society. Take a few seconds to find an AI generator and type transgender. You can use Deep AI, ChatGPT, any kind of AI generator that generates images you have. So do this search, see what kind of result you have. And my expectations are that the kind of results you might have are this. So a few months ago, Wired, the tech-related magazine Wired, published this article, Here's How Generative AI Depicts Queer People. And indeed, there's a lot of purple hair. The idea is that AI kind of always depicts and represents queer people, queer bodies the same way. Like colored hair, including most of the time purple, tattoos, face piercings, not always very accurately non-binary. You can see on my results, for instance, using Deep AI, that either there are some mistakes in the image, like the shoulders on the second person is missing the t-shirt on the shoulder. Most of the people represented are kind of cisgender representing. So that's the kind of result you have most of the time. The second kind of exercise you can do to experiment with the kind of result you have is if you have Instagram, open Instagram and search for transgender and see the kind of result you have. So I think you might have, in terms of number of results, something like more than 12 millions of results with a lot of over-sexualized images. The most important thing to notice here is that those images are selfies. They are self-represented images generated and published by people identifying as transgender. In 2021, the scholar Ace Lerner published an article called Proliferating Identity Trans Selfies as Contemporary Art, where back in 2021, Instagram had only 9 million results. So the idea is that over the past few years, there's an increasing number of publications, like transgender selfies, and those selfies populate the internet and populate the data that AI generators are able to use. And the more self-representations we have online, the more diverse and accurate we can have in terms of transgender representations. Now, I already started to try to explain one of the factors that explains why there are so many gender biases in AI generators, especially when it comes about representing queer bodies and queer identities. So the first factor is the data used by AI generators, right? Depending on the available images published online over the past decades, that's the kind of data AI we use when you ask an AI generator to generate an image of a queer body or transgender body. So what is available online makes a big difference in terms of the kind of images generated by AI. The second factor that explains those gender biases and the lack of representation, or actually misrepresentation of queer bodies in AI, is in terms of who designs AI systems. So who design AI systems? Well, most of the time, engineers, right? What is the background of engineers? STEM fields. And we know how STEM's education tends to be, still today, not extremely diverse and representative of the whole range of experiences and gender identities and sexualities that we find in the society. STEMs are generally still today very white, very masculine, very cisgender. And the fact that there is a lack of diversity in this field of education also has an impact on the biases and representations and gender norms that those engineers will implement while designing AI systems. Because the thing is that no one comes from a social void. We all come, depending on the social, political, historical, cultural, linguistic context we live in, we all embody norms, representations, ways to see the world, and that includes gender representations as well. So, two of the things we can do to further diversify AI in terms of gender representations, especially for queer and transgender folks, is to diversify STEM fields and education for who designs AI systems and further diversify the set of data available to AI systems to generate queer representations. So, considering those factors and those biases, I've been using AI in my gender and society class at DePaul. I've used two main exercises, and each quarter I try to update or try to modify a little bit the exercise. The idea is that both image and text generators using AI both reproduce social representations, gender representations. The exercises I've been experimenting with are mostly creative, speculative writing using AI systems. Try to go back and forth with students, have conversations with AI generators, first trying to see what kind of image we have, and then switch to text generators to have a conversation overall about how image and text generators kind of encapsulate the same kind of biases. The interest in using creative writing is that it's a collective exercise, and the speculative nature of it is that it really allows to engage with like possible futures in terms of queer representations using those AI systems. And both collective and speculative natures of those exercises are very interesting, like alternative ways of knowing that are implemented in queer pedagogy, like outside the uses of AI. So the first kind of exercise I've been doing is asking students to first answer a few questions, like generate their own answers to questions like, write a sentence about a place where you felt unsafe due to gender dynamics, or write a sentence about a situation in which you witnessed a gender violence, and you will clarify how you define gender violence. So a list of questions like this, and students will come up with their own answers. And then I would ask students to enter those same questions into an AI generator, for instance, ChatGPT, and students would then compare their own experience and the results generated by AI. And what happens most of the time is that AI kind of reproduces stereotypes and caricatures in terms of depicting gender violence and gender identities and sexualities. So one of the interests of this exercise is to have a dialogue with AI, try to identify and critically address those biases in AI, and then use all those prompts to write a story as a group. So students would work in groups to use both their answers and answers generated by AI to write speculative fiction. The second exercise I've been using is asking students to ask AI to write a story, including the following items: a plot set in a post-apocalyptic world, a character who is fearless and has a special power to save humanity, a character who needs help in order to survive, a queer character, a situation of gender violence, a situation where one of the characters dies, and a happy end. I also asked students to ask AI for a physical description of all the characters to see how the queer character looks like, for instance. And guess what? AI generates a queer character most of the time with purple hair, face piercings, also interesting physical marks of like physical abuse and assault. And most of the time, like 90% of the story generated by AI includes the queer character dying for the sake of the cisgender character saving humanity. What is interesting with those prompts, like post-apocalyptic world and this kind of scenario, is that AI, in order to answer to those prompts, will take data in the pool of like TV shows and movies, including those elements. And obviously, existing TV shows and movies set in post-apocalyptic world and queer character always have the same depictions and stereotypes. At the end of this exercise, I would ask students to enter a new prompt, following up with the story into the same AI generator. For instance, asking the AI generator to modify the story so that the queer character doesn't die at the end of the story and actually is the savior of the humanity, or doesn't have purple hair or colored hair. Try to interact with how the queer character is actually depicted, right? So one of the interests or aims in that exercise is to reflect on the gender biases of AI, like understanding the origins of those biases, but also contribute to training those AI systems in order to make them more inclusive in the future. And it's also interesting to compare different AI generators using these kind of exercises. For instance, ChatGPT, Claude, which is very sophisticated, Gemini, Meta, DeepSeek, or Deep AI, because depending on how trained those generative AI systems are, they will not come up with exactly the same results and the same nuances. So the more we train the systems, the more inclusive they can become. So in terms of the learning objectives, I've already discussed a few of them, right? But both of those exercises aim at identifying, critically address gender biases in AI systems, like what kind of representations and stereotypes they reproduce, understanding the origins, the social factors of those biases, and learn to experiment with those biases, and by doing so, contribute to train AI systems. Those exercises, because they are creative writing, using part of students' experiences and comparing those experiences with whatever the AI generators produce, one of the interests is also to address other students' experiences of gender violence and eventual trauma in the classroom using AI as a facilitator to have a conversation about like everyone's positionality and gender experiences in the classroom. So thank you very much for your attention. This is a further reading if you're interested in going further into exploring options to use AI as a speculative fiction practice in terms of queer representations and inclusivity. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a lovely day.